Oh, yes.
Welcome back, everyone. Today I'm very excited to bring you a look at the new Marvel Legends Korg Build-A-Figure wave, Mighty Thor from Thor Love and Thunder. This new version of Thor may look a little bit different from the one you're used to in the MCU. That's because she is Jane Foster, having now inherited the power of Thor. How exactly that happens remains to be seen. The movie's not out till July. But it is a story arc that does follow the comics, which were also titled The Mighty Thor, which was kind of a way of differentiating Jane Foster's Thor from, Thor Odinson. Now, I know there are a lot of people that have some very strong feelings about the Mighty Thor run in the Marvel Comics. And personally, I would just tell you to temper your expectations because things don't always happen in the MCU the way they happen in the comics. In fact, I find they seldom do. So, we'll just have to kind of wait and see what kind of origin story we get, what kind of character Jane Foster's Thor turns out to be. And that's pretty much the stance I'm taking, is just wait and see before, I make any prejudgments. I do have a lot of faith in Taika Waititi. I think he's a great director. I mean, he did a fantastic job on Thor Ragnarok, which was the first Thor movie I actually really enjoyed. So I do kind of trust him. I think, if anything, the movie will be good. That being said, if you've seen my reviews before, you know how this goes. We're going to take a look at Mighty Thor's packaging, then we'll open it up, we'll take a look at the figure itself, we'll see a quick look at her Build-A-Figure piece, and then we'll check out all the articulation, the accessories, all that stuff. Naturally, I'll be doing some group shots and comparisons today, and then at the end of the video, I'll give my final thoughts. So our Mighty Thor comes in your standard Marvel Legends packaging, your Korg Build-A-Figure call-out up top, you get the Thor Love and Thunder logo right here, as well as the character's name, Mighty Thor. And then we see Jane Foster herself, and she comes packaged with the helmetless head attached, so you get a really good look at her face. I think it's a really good face sculpt. I don't know how well it actually captures Natalie Portman's visage. I personally don't think it looks very much like her. It looks good, but I don't know. Maybe it's just the hair that's throwing me off. I'm not sure, but I don't think it looks very much like her. Then you get this really cool helmeted head. You get the hammer Mjolnir. And then you get what appears to be, I think it's the left leg of Korg. Hard to tell from here. We'll find out in a moment. Turn to the side, we get a render of Mighty Thor, and I think it's a beautiful render. I think they did a fantastic job. It seems to have some heavier line work than I'm used to for these Legends releases, but I think it still looks really good. And then here on the back, we get a completely different render, which is always a plus to me. Looks like she's either leaping or flying through the air. She's got Mjolnir in her hand here. And you can see it's still cracked from when that's World of Warcraft. Hela destroyed it back in Ragnarok. So this is not the Mjolnir that Thor brought with him from the past, because that was taken back to the past by Captain America at the end of Avengers Endgame. So this is the current timeline Mjolnir somehow restored. Alright, so yeah, great artwork. Then we get flavor text here. It says, Jane Foster's life is forever changed when she mysteriously comes to possess the hammer Mjolnir and the power of the Mighty Thor. I like that. It's actually giving us some tiny little bit of story hint about the movie, which I think is good. Like, they obviously don't want to spoil too much, but too often I find that these MCU-based Legends figures that are centered around an upcoming movie, they are super, super vague. They'll be like, Spider-Man uses webs to fight bad guys. And it's like, okay. It's like, is that ever not true? So I actually appreciate that. It gives us at least something, a little bit of taste, right, to whet the appetite. And then down here, we get a render of Korg himself. And you can see he's been pretty heavily redesigned from the previous figure, at least as far as his outfit. He's more heavily clothed, if anything. Yeah, she is rocking the left leg here. We can see that, number one. To my knowledge, the only other MCU Korg figure that we've gotten in Legends was part of a 2-pack, and that naturally came out around the time of Thor Ragnarok. Alright, so now we get our cross-sells. We get Thor, that we reviewed previously, all done up in his magnificent armor. We get this toy, Mighty Thor. We get Gorr, and they just call him Gorr, not Gorr the God Butcher, probably because, that might be a little intense for a toy that could be sold to kids. We get King Valkyrie, because I guess she's a king. I'm not sure how that works. Ravager Thor, Star-Lord, sporting some facial hair now, and then a teenage Groot. So, pretty good wave. What's interesting about this wave, it is, as far as I could tell, entirely centered around the Thor Love and Thunder movie, which is a rarity as far as I know. Typically what I see is that you'll get, most of the wave, maybe, 4 to 5 of the figures being centered around, whatever movie the wave is, and then the remaining few figures are something else, usually comic book oriented, or, MCU characters from a different movie, game characters. So this is interesting. These seem to all come from the movie, which on the one hand, it gives you a lot of synergy and does, give you a lot of characters from the movie in one go. So I actually kind of like that. I don't know if I would like it all the time, because that does mean that, other characters aren't really getting a chance to shine. Maybe some more obscure characters like Morloon from the Spider-Man No Way Home wave. But in this case, I'm kind of digging it. Maybe it's because I don't have any figures of these characters, so maybe just, the chance to get some representation of these characters on my shelf is just appreciated. Maybe I'd be less thrilled if I already had like a Star-Lord and a Groot and stuff. But still, I think it looks pretty good. They look like they make for a pretty good set, so I'm all for it. At least this time. Might get fatigued from it after a while. So yeah, that's the packaging. It looks really good. I think it's got fantastic artwork on it. So now, let's go ahead and open it up. Now we get to see Jane out of her packaging. And you can see I already have her wielding Mjolnir, just, I don't know, because I can. We have our additional head laying here. And then we have our Korg Build-A-Figure piece. So let's take a quick look at that. So very nicely sculpted and painted. It actually has double jointed knees, which is not something I've seen often on larger figures. So that's very cool. And all this fur around here is made of that soft rubber, which is important because he's got this ankle rock, and the rubber here actually has some give to allow him to actually tilt his ankle back like that. And that's something that we looked at here on the Thor figure previously, is that the rubber on these toys seems to have been updated with a much softer material that has a lot more give to it, which is great because oftentimes these like softer plastics, on skirts and capes, hair, they get in the way of articulation, but they seem to have really worked out some kind of formula to where they can actually just move out of the way much more readily, and I really like that. So now let's take a look at Jane herself. First, we'll look at the cape, and like I said, very, very soft rubber. Look how much give that has. It's almost like a soft goods cape. And then the skirt area too, these lift up very well. The hair is also very, very soft. So that means she gets a very wide range of motion on her head articulation, which is a double ball joint. She has her universal shoulders, bicep swivel, double bend elbows, right there. She has her universal wrists, and her hammer holding hand has the wrist hinge going up and down, which is kind of common for hands that are meant to do that. She has a ball joint right here in her torso, which gives her good range of motion. She feels like she should have a waist swivel. Like, this pelvic piece and the middle section are clearly separate pieces, but they don't seem to actually turn. So, I don't know. There's a separation, but there's no articulation there. All right, she's got the universal hips here, which, because of the soft plastic, gets a lot of range. Thigh swivel. She's got the double bend knees, ankle rocking, and the ankle rotation, which is ratcheted. So, really posable figure, and I love that she's, got this very long flowing outfit, but is in no way hindered by it. She can move as well as she needs to. That's a big issue I've had with Legends figures in the past, is that a lot of them, while they have all the joints and the swivels and all that to where they should be able to move, because of a robe or, something along those lines, they mostly just have to stand straight up and not really be able to pose. She does not have that issue, so I'm very grateful for that. Let's get a close look at Mjolnir. So you can see it's got a long shaft, it's got the little, I don't know what you call this, the hoop on the end. I'm sure there's a word for it. But it's very nicely decorated, and when you look closely at the actual head of the hammer, you can see it's got those cracks in it like it's fractured. Now I would have loved if they had done some nice paint work to actually fill those cracks with a very thin light blue color to show that escaping energy, but sadly that didn't happen. Guess it was a little out of the budget. Oh, so is her standing up. Womp womp. All right, let's go ahead and swap her head real quick so we can see the helmeted Mighty Thor head. Very, very similar to the other one, just has a helmet over it. All right, angles. Now we get this. Now she really looks like Thor. Look at her. I think the helmet design is great. I love the symbol right there on the forehead. I love the wings that just swoop back. You got lines going across like the cheek area there. It looks really, really good. And there's one detail I want to draw attention to that I forgot to with the other head, but let's pull that back up. So, I said how I thought this head really didn't look much like Natalie Portman. Now, when you actually get it in hand and you hold it at the right angles and everything, it actually does start to look like her a bit. I can see the resemblance now. But what's really a crazy level of detail is you can see a little dot here. Boy, that's too bright. All right, a little dot there, and a little dot there on the upper cheek. And at first I thought, like, oh, these are like little smudges on my toy or something. No, those are actually recreations of the birthmarks on Natalie Portman's face. I mean, talk about attention to detail. She's got the one right there, on like the middle of the cheek, and then one on like the upper cheekbone. And yeah, she really has them. You can look up pictures of her. And even the helmeted head, you can see the one on this cheek here. Now the other one's covered by the helmet, but still, that is a fantastic level of attention to detail. Like, it's something they easily just could have left out. And typically, you know, when they make a toy of somebody, they don't usually show their little marks or imperfections or anything. They actually put it on there, and I love that level of realism. And I really have to give the designers props for actually including that, because, I mean, it's a tiny detail. It's something that a lot of people probably won't even notice, but it's a really, really good detail. Here's a shot of Mighty Thor with her one-time lever and now, I don't know, partner, rival, sidekick? I'm not sure what their status is going to be, but Thor Odinson here, who's the figure we just reviewed previously to her, and they make quite the pairing. I mean, Guy Thor looks a bit more beefed up because he has gotten some sort of, you know, mysterious upgrade. We still don't know what it is yet. Whereas Jane or Mighty Thor looks more like, you know, the traditional Thor with, you know, the mostly red and black, silver helmet, all that. But they both make, you know, quite a pair together, and they really, really do just aesthetically blend well. I do wonder if we're going to get more Thors in the MCU, and then in turn if we'll get figures of those, because I'd love to build like a little, you know, army of Thors with, you know, Odinson kind of leading the charge, and then he's just got all the proceeding Thors just fighting alongside him. I think that'd be very, very cool. Now, of course, if we want to, we could always restore Thor's hammer to him, just to see him with Mjolnir, since he hasn't rocked this bad boy in a while. Just go ahead and push it in there like you normally do. Yeah, in there. He doesn't hold it very well. His fingers have a hard time closing around it, so definitely got to angle it right here. But, hey, look at that. Classic Thor weapon. It really, really is a shame that they did not give him a second weapon holding hand so that he could dual wield Mjolnir and Stormbreaker. But unfortunately, he's got to settle for one or the other. And while we're at it, just because we can, let's give Mighty Thor Stormbreaker. Just because why not? That way they can, you know, you can see what they look like wielding each other's weapons. Actually, it scales pretty well for her. I mean, it definitely makes for a bigger axe comparatively, but it's not too big. It's not like ridiculously big. And Thor looks very regal holding his classic hammer, so I like really either combination. So you can have some fun with this if you want to. If you'd rather give Jane the large battle axe and give Thor's classic hammer, you can always do that. And this completes our look at the new Mighty Thor. I think this is a just really gorgeous figure. I think it came out very, very well. The details on it are perfect. The posability, all that's really, really great. She's a little unsteady on her feet, and that's because, you know, she has rather small feet, but, you know, does have to have a cape kind of hanging off her back. She gets Mjolnir, which is, you know, fairly hefty. So it might make her just a bit unsteady for posing. And you just got to make sure that you have her, you know, well balanced when you pose her. But everything else about her I think is really great. I like both versions of the head, both the masked and unmasked versions. And even though I wasn't very impressed with the unmasked version in the package, once I actually got it in hand and really got to look at it from different angles under good lighting, I really understood what they were going for and how much it really actually does resemble Natalie Portman's face. Like I said, even right down to the birthmarks, which is a pretty crazy detail. So I think it works out very, very well. It looks good either with or without the helmet. You know, whether you want a character that looks more like Jane Foster or a character that looks more like Mighty Thor, you can really have both options, and I think she's really good. I do think the lack of optional hands kind of hurts her a little bit, but overall, she still ends up being quite a nice figure and something I'm very happy to add to my collection, because I've never had any version of, Mighty Thor. I honestly don't know much about her, because if you've followed me for any length of time with the Marvel reviews, you know that I haven't really read comics much since, the 90s, maybe early 2000s. So I'm much more familiar with the stuff that was popular then. Mighty Thor wasn't even a thing, when I stopped reading. But I know of her pretty well. I know that her comic arcs can be rather divisive. I think some are better than others, and of course you're gonna have some people that like them, some people that dislike them. But I think her design is cool. I think it's an interesting concept, and I think she looks really, really good in both this figure and so far what we've seen in the movie. I mean, they've just done a stellar job translating that movie to something that works in real life. So I like it. I like the figure, and I think if you have any interest in having Jane Foster or female Thor, you'll really like this too. It works out very well and looks phenomenal. Of course, that is just how I feel about this figure, so now I want to know what you all think of it. Do you think this looks really good? Is it something that you're eager to get a hold of? Do you like the helmetless head more, or the one with the helmet more? Do you like them both? Neither? Do you not want this figure for one reason or another? Any and all feedback is always welcome in the comments section. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to toss it a like. Let YouTube know you want to see more stuff like this. If you do want to see more like this, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you always get a heads up when I post something new. I thank you for joining me for this look at the brand new Marvel Legends Korg Build-A-Figure wave of Mighty Thor. And with all that said, I will see you next time.